Welcome back, guys. It's been a bit. Gonna finally be working on the S4, doing some maintenance updates to it. And also, it's been about a year that I've owned this car now. So I've put 15,000 miles on it in the past year. So it's been driven quite a lot. But I'm gonna go over the cost of owning a luxury German sedan and kind of give you guys a look into what it takes to own and maintain one of these cars, because they're really not cheap. They have a reputation for not being cheap, and I found that out. And maybe through this, it will help you guys to, pay more attention if you're going to go out and buy one of these, or at least give you some things to check or look for, be mindful of at a minimum. But yeah, we're gonna go through the cost of me owning it for the past year and what I've had to do to it in that year of ownership. And we're also gonna do a oil change, coolant flush, and a brake fluid flush. And while I'm doing all of those things, I will let you know why I'm doing all of those things as well, because there's some interesting stories behind this yellow car specifically. But before we get into all that, I'm gonna have to get this car up into the air on jack stands so that I can get underneath it. So let's get moving and we'll keep talking as we're working. And if you're new to the channel and you're wondering why I'm jacking this up, and you saw the background of the previous shot, you would be curious because obviously you could tell that I have a 4-post lift over there. But like I said, if you're new around here, the two cars that are sitting on that lift do not run. And it was kind of stupid of me when we moved into this house and this garage that I loaded this up with the two cars that do not run at all. So when I do maintenance work to this day, I am still operating like I used to in my old garage and putting everything up on jack stands, which is not very fun. But at the same time, it helps you guys out because not everybody owns a lift, and I recognize that. So sometimes it's nice to feel like people that post on YouTube aren't just a whole bunch of rich people with massive garages that always put their cars up on lifts and never have to worry about putting a car up on jack stands. So this gives you guys an insight into if you're working in your driveway or in a little garage that doesn't have this much space, you have an idea of what you could potentially do to put your car up on jack stands. Because unfortunately, putting jack stands underneath a car can be very dangerous. So it's smart to pay attention to what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, watch a video or ask a friend, or at a minimum, have somebody there to watch you do whatever you're doing so that if a car does fall on you while you're doing this, somebody's there to help you. The negative to what I'm doing right now is this garage is a giant steel building, has absolutely no cell service, and I'm the only one down here. So don't be like me, because I would really hate for Caitlin to come down here and find me smushed underneath the car one day. But I like to think I know what I'm doing. And yeah, now that we got the rear up, let's get the front in the air. Then we can take the tires off. So now, for this portion, all I do is pick a control arm mount to put this on. And it should pick up the entire front end of the car. voila, there we go. So the first thing that we're gonna focus on is doing a coolant flush. Now, one, we're gonna do that because you can tell that the coolant's low. Two, I never changed this when I bought it. And I've learned my lesson with that, and hope that you guys can learn a lesson from this as well, because it's been a really cold winter here in Pennsylvania. And what happened to me is I left my car sitting outside up at my house because I don't have a garage that's attached to the house. And I went to work and the car started overheating. Had no heat actually in the car. It was 20 degrees as a high that day. The low was like 0. And what ended up happening is my entire coolant system froze into a block of ice, like literally. So this car, the temp warning came on the dash 3 times on my way to work. I personally thought that I had a thermostat that was stuck shut, or that I had a blown water pump. So I waited to see what the car did for the drive home, and it drove home perfectly fine because it sat out in the sun all day while I was sitting at work and warmed up. So what I ended up finding out about is these nifty little coolant testers. My coworker loaned me one of these so I could check this, and I'm about to show you guys how bad this system really is. So you just got to suck enough coolant up into it to get up to the fill line, which we are just barely at. And then you just look at, just look at where the needles land. So for me, this is the freeze point on it, and you can see that I only have protection like in the realm of like 5 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not good. I checked one of my other cars and it was good to like -20. Actually, I think it was actually good to -35. So this thing froze into a block of ice. So I've been keeping it parked in the garage because the garage is heated to keep this warm enough every day that I can drive to work just fine. So now we're gonna get underneath it, drain all this. I'm probably gonna siphon all of this stuff out as much as I can so I have less coming out of the radiator release. And I'm gonna show you guys what it takes and how much coolant you need to put back in this thing. And we'll test it after the fact once this is filled up with what I know is good coolant, and show you guys the difference on here of what proper mixed coolant will do and what coolant with a whole bunch of water in it looks like, which I believe is what this is, unfortunately. So the materials that you're gonna need to do this is obviously a drain pan, a little funnel, and I use a turkey baster to get the coolant out of the reservoir. So you can see I've already done that. That's how much I was able to get out. So most of the reservoir, truly, you can skip that step. I just do it so that there's a little bit less coolant that I could potentially end up wearing as a new accessory to my outfit. So let me climb underneath the car. I'll show you guys where you need to drain this coolant from. So the spot to drain the coolant is this little tube here. This is the passenger side lower corner of the radiator. You twist this plug out and it releases coolant flow to drain out of this tube, and it'll drain down. Obviously, as you can see, Audi was nice enough to put another hose right below it. So that's why I have that little funnel, because I'm going to squeeze that in underneath there so that when this starts draining, I don't soak this hose and then have coolant running literally everywhere down here, hopefully. So that's the goal. And if you do this and this plug doesn't turn nicely for you, don't force it. Just take the hose clamp off the lower radiator hose and empty it from there, because you have a higher chance of breaking this plastic bung that connects to the radiator if that is stuck in place. So it's easier just to pull a hose clamp and be done with it that way. All right, a couple things to note about that last clip. One, if you're like me and you use pliers to get that drain valve out, make sure that your drain valve twists by hand first. Mine did, that's why I grabbed the pliers and used those to pull that drain valve out because my hands were too big to fit in there and have enough leverage to actually move that drain valve properly. Two, the drain valve should not have pulled out all the way like what it did. Granted, it's nice that it did because it flowed quicker and drained faster, but it's a pain in the butt to line that thing back up and push it back in. So I didn't do it on camera, but I finagled that back into the hole and have it cinch back up. So now we are going to put coolant back in this, fill it up to the max line on the reservoir, and then cycle through trying to get coolant to fill the system because it's gonna burp a few times and have to go through its process of venting air out and so on and so forth. So it'll take a little bit, but that's why I did this first, because then I can warm the engine up to do the oil change while venting the coolant and all that fun stuff. So let's fill this thing back up. Hopefully we had no leaks because of me pulling that out all the way, and we'll go from there. So now it's time to fill her back up. So I buy concentrate from the dealership and I just mix it with distilled water. Words are hard. I just mix it with distilled water. According to the capacity charts for this car, it should take 2.3 gallons of coolant when it's completely dry. Now, when you do the coolant flush, like I just did, you're not actually going to get all of the coolant out of this thing. You're only going to get about half. So I'm just going to fill until the reservoir fills up to the max line and go from there. And then if it burps and needs more, I have more sitting underneath my workbench ready to go to fill this up with. So I'm probably also going to carry a bottle of coolant with me for a little while, just in case this does burp while I'm out driving somewhere and a huge air pocket goes away or something like that. Then I have coolant to fill it up with, obviously. The one other note for while I'm doing this, I put the drain pan back underneath the drain valve, and I do that so that if something does leak, I hear water running. Woo. So that's the goal with doing that way. So now, for the rest of the maintenance, here's what we got. We bought this from the good people at FCP Euro. They make oil change kits, basically, it's basically one click, you have everything that you need. So, man oil filter, 5W40 from Liquid Moly. I use Liquid Moly in everything that I own, just because it's good oil, in my opinion. This stuff in the green containers is UV reactive. So if you had a black light, essentially, you could see if you had oil leaking all over your engine. So I've been using this specifically on this car. I've never used it in anything else because I did not know the history of it. I didn't know if it leaked or anything like that. So I still need to buy a black light to see if this is leaking. But I've been using it now for 15,000 miles. New drain plug. I always replace these. You could just replace the washer, but like they come in the kit, so I just get them that way. And this is brake fluid for the next job, obviously. But the beauty of FCP Euro, if people aren't aware, is they have a lifetime guarantee. So what I do on all of these things, besides oil, because it's just a pain in the butt to have to return it, but filters, drain plugs, anything like that, any hard parts, I replace them for free. I send them back, get store credit for them, and then basically my next oil change is free or like $10 or less normally. So I just keep doing that over and over again. So the only thing that I'm really buying every time to do this is oil. The one thing though to pay attention to if you are going to do that, FCP Euro sometimes changes what's in their kits. So you have to look at what is in the kit items to make sure it's the same as what you ordered previously, or you won't be able to return it to do the lifetime guarantee. I've caught on to that because it's happened to me a couple times now that they've changed whatever it is. Like this time the drain plug is different and I didn't notice that. So I won't be able to return that one until I do the next oil change, but that's like a $3 part, so not a big deal. But like getting free filters over and over again when these are $15 to $20, depending on which one you buy, it's pretty nice. So now we're going to get the oil out of the old girl, put fresh stuff in, walk you through what it takes to do that. And then the last thing will be brake fluid flush, and of course the 1 year wrap up of how much this thing is costing me. So what I always do when I'm doing this is obviously take the fill cap off and just find some place to set it. Second thing I do, I just crack the oil filter loose. I don't take it out completely yet because there's gonna be oil all over it if you do. But I just crack it loose. That way the system is definitely open. And then from there, it'll drain better out of the pan. So all we gotta do is loosen the drain plug now off of the oil pan. And when you do this, you are bound to get coated with oil because of the design of these drain pans. Unfortunately, Audi did not use a drain pan or a drain bolt that goes like on the backside of the pan, so it drains vertically, and as you can see, you get coated. So wear gloves and use tools that you don't necessarily care about. So now, back up top here, we can finish taking the filter out while that is still draining. Now the filter is always going to drip oil in some regards, but to try and not get it absolutely everywhere as best as you can, I just use a grocery bag. And then from there, you can also use the same bag to then pop the filter off of the cap. And you're left with one piece. Now don't mind the complete mess that my workbench is right now. I've had a ton of projects on the go and really never finish like any of them. So you'll notice that this plastic tube is still left on there. That is not supposed to be on the cap still. That comes with the filter. So we gotta pop this guy off. There's 4 clips at the bottom. Oh, there we go. 4 clips at the bottom of the cap that fits into. You just don't break them. There are 2 O-rings. Well, there's 1 in the cap. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to show you guys this, but there's a little tiny tab right down there that you need to grab with either small needle nose pliers, or I use a little pick tool. So I'll just use a 90-degree pick on that tab. You can pull it right out that way, and the whole thing releases. You get that. This also needs to be sent back to FCP Euro. Everything that you get out of the new package needs to go back if you choose to return any of these parts for the lifetime replacement guarantee. So obviously this O-ring goes back in the same way that it came out. So we'll just drop that in. And then I use the pick to just press it in and seat it into the groove that it's supposed to be in. And that's that part done. Now, this thin little O-ring, that is on the filter housing on the car. So that thin little O-ring is on the lip at the top of the filter housing. So same thing, just use the pick to pull that up and out, and then we'll be ready to go put the filter back in, and I'll tell you the torque spec for it when we get to that point. Now, the other thing to note as I'm doing this is if you've read any manual on how to do an oil change, you have probably seen the instruction saying to coat all the O-rings with like a light film of fresh oil, things of that nature. Truly, at the end of the day, if you're doing these, there's enough oil left over, just residual, that you will not need to worry about doing that. Did I send me the wrong filter? Never had this much problem. Scratch what I did earlier. Don't pull this tube out. I mistaked this tube for, or mistook, this tube for the tube that's inside there. That tube needs to stay in there because that tube is what lets you snap this in. So scratch that previous clip. Whoops. So now, obviously, putting this back on is no different than taking it off. Now the torque spec for this that's printed on the cap is 25 plus then an additional 5 Newton meters, which to me just means 30. What I've discovered between doing oil changes on this car and doing oil changes on my wife's Q5, which there's other videos on the channel about doing that, those caps pretty much just bottom out, regardless of what the torque spec is supposed to be or not. So I just put them on tight. Putting a fresh drain plug in here is no different than what we did to remove it, really. Main thing, wipe all the excess oil away as much as you can, so that the threads are dry when you tighten this in, and also the O-ring or the crush washer also stays mostly dry as best as possible. It's pretty much impossible to do this completely dry, but you know, as dry as you can be. And then from there, snug it up, and then the final torque spec that we will be going to here is 22 foot-pounds, which for everyone that wants to get technical, I will also put the Newton meter spec that Audi would have given you below right here. Now the last part that's left, obviously put oil back in it. The listed capacity is 6.6 quarts when you do the oil drain and filter change. So that's what I start with. And then this car is still old enough to have a dipstick, so I just checked that. If you didn't have a dipstick, you would need to let the car warm up, and you could check through the MMI in the car, the radio essentially, and check your oil level that way. And that's basically it for doing an oil change. So while I'm dumping oil in this thing, let's talk about how much this car has cost me. So I bought this car in the end of January of 2024. It didn't get delivered to me until the end, or the end of April, actually. So I've owned this car for almost a year, or over a year, but I haven't really had this car in my possession for an entire year. Reason being, there was a bunch of issues that the dealership was supposed to fix. Well, there was really one main issue the dealership that I bought this from was supposed to fix. They struggled to fix it for a few months, and then finally delivered it to me without having repaired the issue and just giving me money back. If you want, there's a video on that. I'll put it up top as a thumbnail. So not factoring in purchase price, the day that the car got delivered to me, and the car was pulled off of the trailer and put into my driveway, and then I tried to go to work that day, the starter literally died the moment I got it. So a new starter plus install, because I did not do that myself, because I did not have the time when that happened. That was a grand total of $450. So we'll put that up on the screen here and just keep a running list. So that was $450 immediately upon getting this car. Then I've done 3 oil changes. Obviously I do those myself, as you can see. And truly the materials for that cost about $100. So I've been doing oil changes every 5,000 miles. Audi tells you that you need to do them every 10,000 actually, but I don't really love that. So we'll put $300 up for that, but if you're being technical, it should only be like $100 so far. 200 actually. And then after doing oil changes, the only other thing that has gone wrong with this car in my time of ownership is the center drive shaft, or the propeller shaft as it's described by Audi. It decided to exit the chat. I was out of town for work, and my wife was driving this car, and she does know how to drive manual, so that's not the problem here. I came home, we went for a drive. I could hear the drive shaft thudding in the tunnel, and it was not like that when I left. And my wife looked at me and went, "Oh, that's not normal?" Obviously, no, but she didn't know any better at the time, which is fine. So then this car went to Audi, and I looked underneath it. I knew that the center joint of the drive shaft was falling apart. It went to Audi for 4 weeks at that point because it took a couple days for them to diagnose, which basically was them just throwing it up on a lift going, "Yep, your drive shaft's bad." And then the lead time for parts, of course, was 3 to 6 weeks from Germany because they had to special order it. That took a bit. Thankfully, they were able to get it in quicker than they were expecting to. I had a loaner the whole time, which was a brand new Q5, which I was fine with. It's kind of boring to drive, but it drove fine. So I had that for 4 weeks, and the drive shaft for parts and labor ran me $4,200. The silver lining to that $4,200 is there's a 3-year warranty on that thing. So if this car decides to chuck a drive shaft again, that's covered, and it's going straight back to Audi because I will not be paying for another drive shaft to get put in this car. Not at that price. Unfortunately, with all the cars that I have, none of them are running at the time, so I could not just order the drive shaft and install it myself because I wouldn't have had a car to drive. So that was the trade-off. I got the loaner. I basically paid for the loaner instead of paying for a rental, and the dealership put the drive shaft in for me instead, which was fine. So the only other issues that I've had, or other costs, yearly state inspection in Pennsylvania cost me $90. They found that the brake fluid is kind of iffy, which is why we're doing a brake flush. I'll show you that here in a second. And obviously the coolant freezing. That's it. I haven't had anything else break on this car, knock on wood, any other expenses. It's been fine. Would I buy another one? Probably not. Or if I did buy another one, I would be way more diligent about checking certain items on this. The history of this car, it's got 85,000 miles on it now. I bought it with 70. The history of it is it's been sold at auction twice. It was originally a lease car. It's been in at least 2 accidents that I know of, and that's why some of the panels are mismatched on here because they've been repainted. I know the front end has been repainted poorly because there's overspray underneath it all over the place. Yeah, I think this car has honestly lived a rough life, and I'm trying to make it better for it, but it has its quirks. So for the grand total, a year's worth of owning this car has cost me $5,600, give or take, which is frankly a lot. That's roughly a quarter of the purchase price of this car. So that gives you a clue of how much I paid for this thing, but I will not tell you the exact dollar value. But yeah, that's a year's worth of ownership for a luxury German sedan. That's a manual with a supercharger. So pros and cons there. So just for reference, here's fresh 50/50 mixed antifreeze. This is what the coolant tester should come up with when you don't have a ton of water in your coolant mixture. So let's do this just to show you guys an example. So we are up to the fill line here, and you can see that the little indicator arm here is between -20 and -35 degrees Fahrenheit. So the stuff that was in the S4 was definitely a lot of water, unfortunately. So that is why when you go buy a used car, either A, swap all the fluids to something that you know is good, or B, have testers for everything. That includes brake fluid, coolant. Can't really test transmission fluid to my knowledge. Oil, I just change it right after I buy something. You know, differentials, if you have vehicles that have them, just, it's like the quickest, like, sanity check, so to speak, to just put fresh fluids into vehicles that you buy, and then you don't have these problems that I've been going through. So now the last step of this is we're going to move on to doing our brake fluid swap. And in order to do that, we're going to take this panel off so that we have better access to the brake reservoir, because Audi tucked it up in this rain tray, and it kind of sucks to get to when you leave this plastic in your way, so it's easier just to take it out. And the whole reason that we are doing this brake fluid change is because when I got this car inspected for the state inspection, they were nice enough to tell me that the brake fluid didn't technically fail any of their tests, but they told me that it was black, which is not a normal color for brake fluid. And like you can see just in this, it's like green, which is not a normal color to have. So what I'm doing is I'm just sucking this out, no different than what I did when I pulled all the coolant out of the reservoir, because the less that you have in the reservoir when you go to switch, the easier it is to do a bleed. You get to fresh fluid way faster than if you didn't use or didn't suck the fluid out of the reservoir. So I'm going to finish up doing this, get this all completely dry, and then I will pick the camera back up and we can talk through what it takes to do the actual flush portion through all the calipers, what order you need to do the calipers in, and what tools I'm using to make this easier for me. Is we're going to fill the reservoir up with what I know is good fluid. And then from there, I'm going to use my power bleeder and bleed more through the system. We're going to go around to each caliper and maybe do the clutch. I don't know if I feel like doing it or not tonight, but we'll see. And we're going to go around until we get this color fluid out of each corner. So the only thing to pay attention to is that when you do that, you have to go in a specific order per Audi. And the reason you have to go in the specific order is because the ABS systems, basically the way the valves work, you need to go through it in the way that the valves would operate so that you push fluid the correct way. If you don't, there's potential that you can actually end up pushing air and trapping it into the ABS block. And that is a massive pain in the butt to try and get back out. I don't have the reservoir all the way full. I have it decently full. And now I'm gonna put this into the power bleeder and start that process up. So this is my Motive power bleeder. This is probably one of the best things I've ever purchased to do single person brake fluid flushes or brake bleeds. Really, it's just a glorified like garden sprayer. You can make one of these yourselves. The only thing that's like Motive specialized, so to speak, is like making the cap in one piece. If you make this at home, like you have to bond a brass fitting into a plastic cap and all that kind of stuff. So basically all it is you just pump this to pressurize the system, which I'm going to pump it up to be like between 15 and 20 psi, ideally. And then I'm going to go around and crack the bleeders in the order that they need to be cracked. So like we're going to start with the driver's front, then passenger front, then go driver's rear, and then passenger rear. Each time we're going to crack these crack the bleed screw open, drain it through a clear tube into a container till we see clear fluid. Then we just need to come back up here and make sure that our pressure hasn't dropped too much. If it has, we just pump it back up. If it hasn't, we can move on to the next one, and we just keep on moving that way. This is a fantastic product and saves you from having to have a buddy come over and pump a pedal over and over and over again. So hopefully this goes well. Hopefully all the bleeders are free, reasonably free on this, because that's really the only way that I foresee that we could have problems doing this. So now with the power bleeder pressurized, we're going to crack this bleed screw open, and then we are going to hopefully see dark fluid come out of that tube. That would be the goal, at least. And yep, it's just as green and disgusting as what came out of the reservoir. Here, I'll see if I can loop this hose a little high to show you guys. You can see it has that green tinge to it that it really shouldn't have. So now we're just gonna continue this until it turns clear. And then from there, we can close the bleed screw back up and then move to the other side and just repeat the process over and over and over again. Well, if you made it this far, this is gonna wrap it up. For reference, this still isn't perfect, but it's way more yellow than green than when it started. I'll put a picture here of like when I first started filling a bottle of how green and disgusting this was. But I'm glad that I did this. I'm glad that the place that I took this for an inspection told me that the brake fluid was black for whatever reason. So now I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to see if this happens again. I'm hoping this was just like original brake fluid and it'll not be this way in the future. But that wraps up maintenance on this. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing a little bit about the experience of owning this for a year. I hope it doesn't deter you from trying to buy one of these cars. They are really fun to drive. They just are really expensive. And being completely honest, like the bulk of that cost is something that was completely out of my control and just a fluke thing that happened. Truly, these cars do not chuck drive shafts, usually. It's very rare. Most people on forums and Facebook and all that say that it's incredibly unlikely that that's going to happen. But it is what it is. I think this car has lived a very rough life before I got it, and I didn't pay as much attention when I took it for a test drive and looked it over and all that stuff as I probably should have. And that's on me. But it is what it is. I own it now. I've enjoyed the year of owning it, even though it has had its headaches. And I hope going through the maintenance process on this has helped you guys in the future. But that's going to end this video off. So thank you for watching. If you made it this far, please hit that subscribe button or the like button. Anything helps. I love making content, but I also want to make content that you guys want to see. So if you want to see something specific, if you want to see more projects, if you want to see what I'm doing with either of those cars over there on the lift, if you want me to get back to doing that, let me know in the comments, because I will gladly work on something that is not maintenance related if I have a reason to do it. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and we'll see everybody next time.